Business Connections Live, the UK's leading online business channel. This is Business Connections Live with Steve Hyland.
Hello there, welcome along to Business Connections Live, the program for entrepreneurs, SMEs and business owners. Now, on today's show, we're going to be discussing the myths. We're going to be busting the myths about hospice care. And if you're thinking that's a little bit of a strange subject for Business Connections Live, it's something that many of us have actually come into contact with directly at some stage in our lives. It could be ourselves, it could be friends, relatives, it could be work colleagues. And there are things that businesses just like yours can actually do to help those organisations that are providing that hospice care, that palliatory care at the end of somebody's life. And it's something that a business can do. It can be the business's responsibility, it could be your business charity, whatever. We're going to find out more about that and how your business can help and what it can mean to not just your business but also the community that you support as being a business. Joining me in the studio today is Marianne Imrie. She's the Chief Executive of Woking and Sambert Hospice and Wellbeing Care. Marianne, it's lovely to have you with us today.
It's lovely to be here.
A lot of people, I think, when we talk about hospice care, we get a serious face on. We go very serious, very sad. Is it an industry that it's obviously not an industry that's full of joy, but it's obviously an industry that looks forward. There are good things out of it, aren't there?
Yeah, I think so. I think most people have the perception that hospice is a one-way street. You go in and you come out in a box 2 weeks later, and it's really not like that. Lots of people are living so much longer with complex diseases. A very small proportion indeed of our patients die with us. The rest come in, they might come in for respite care, they may come in for palliative pain control, and they go out. So they may come in several times over that period of time when they're dealing with that illness.
When people are looking at it, how is it funded? I mean, fundamentally, you are a charitable business, effectively. So
correct.
Somebody somewhere has to pay your staff. Somebody somewhere has to pay for your buildings, your premises. You've got to be generating cash somehow. So how is it paid for?
About 25% of our income comes from the public purse, and the rest comes from charitable giving. So that's a mixture of donations and legacies, but also our retail activity. So that's a really big ask from our local community. So
we're talking, what kind of figures are we talking about? Are we talking thousands or are we talking millions?
Oh, we're talking millions. We're talking millions. It costs around £6 million a year, every year, to run the sort of service that we run, and that's our inpatient unit. But more importantly, the 75% of our care that's delivered within the community, that's delivered in people's homes by nurses getting in cars and driving out to see them, to provide comfort and care to them, as I say, many times over a long period of time, but many times at the end of life as well.
We're going to talk a little bit how local businesses and organisations can help their local charities a little bit later on. What prompted you to get into the industry?
I was approached initially by the hospice and asked if I'd like to become a trustee. In other words, you
like sums, don't you? You're an accountant deep down, are you?
So I was invited to become a trustee, which is the equivalent of a non-executive director, and it was a business I didn't know. My background is acute healthcare, so it's very much more commercial environment. So I became a trustee at the beginning of the year, and things weren't going quite as well or as smoothly as they could do, and I was asked to step up to become a chief exec in May. And funding being such as it was, I said yes, I'll take it on, but actually you're not going to pay me. You haven't got any. You're short of money. I'll do this. I will give you a year. So I effectively put to one side my own management consultancy company and stepped into this role, and it's been a joy. I will get more out of it than they will get out of me, which is what I always say.
When you look at it, what do you think Are there problems with it in this particular sector that you feel you're probably going to see a number of times if you were to go to any other charity? Because you've come from the private sector, going into this sector, the charitable sector. Are you thinking to yourself, wow, fundamentally there are elements of this that aren't quite right? They just need to apply business rules to it.
There's a little bit of that. I think predominantly it's the fact that providing this sort of care is so much more expensive than it was 15 or 20 years ago. 15 or 20 years ago, you would be providing end-of-life care. Now we're providing care that allows people to live longer with diseases, with debilitating conditions. And that's much more expensive. We're much more regulated as well now. And the care we give is much more sophisticated. So everything costs more. And the funding from the public purse does not reflect that. Mm-hmm. So we've got this perfect storm of the costs of operating a business like ours is so much more expensive, and the sources of funding are reducing.
Are some of the difficulties down to the fact that you've got a very competitive marketplace as well, because there are a lot of charities out there that are chasing the same pound, aren't they?
I think that's right. I mean, it's funny to hear you use the word competition in terms of charities, but you do get compassion fatigue. We're fortunate we operate within a new building which is very much fit for purpose, which isn't the case for a lot of hospices. But that building cost a lot of money to develop, and there was a capital appeal 2 or 3 years ago for that. So in a sense, we're now going back to people and saying, you were very generous 2 or 3 years ago, you need to keep being generous to us.
When you're dealing with the team that you've got around you, and I know that some of the team are going to be watching, so we've got to say a big thank you to them because of what they do. Yeah. But you're dealing with people who are effectively employed, so you are running a business to all intents and purposes, but you're also working with people who are volunteering, and they're volunteering for their own particular reasons as well, aren't they?
Yes, so we have some 250 employees working for us, some part-time, some full-time.
It's a large...
It's a big business.
It's a proper business, yes.
It's a very big business. And I think what people see when they think about hospice care is they see the building. But actually there's so much more that we do that isn't within that building. It's out in the community that isn't so visible. It's the girls and boys that will rock up every day to people who are struggling in their own homes, but who want to remain in their own homes. They want to be cared for. They want to live as long as they possibly can within their own home. And some of them eventually want to die within their home. They don't want to go to a hospice. So we have to respect that. We also have some 800 or so volunteers who bring a mixture of different skills to the business, and yes, some of them do have their own reasons for being there. Most of them have been touched in some way by a terminal illness or a death of a loved one who we have helped in that period. So most people, and I suppose it's all about self-preservation, isn't it? You don't like to think about hospice care until you have to think about it.
Well, there are things in life that come along, aren't they? You swan along, and you often hear the expression, never saw a doctor for all of my life, and now I feel like I'm in and out of hospital all the time. Absolutely. So, yes, and I always try and make a point of speaking to our volunteers and hearing their stories. And I'm humbled every time I speak to them. I'm humbled every time I go onto our ward and talk to the nurses that are providing that sort of care. I know I couldn't do it. I couldn't do this job. They say something back to you, don't they? They say they couldn't do the sums, could they?
Yeah. And they couldn't do my job.
So it's horses for courses, isn't it? And you've got to have someone that takes up that particular mantle and understands the commercial aspects of it while they provide that one-to-one, person-to-person skills.
But as the person at the helm who has to employ that commercial sense and that commercial brain, I can never lose sight of what we're there for.
If there was one thing that you think you could have brought from the private sector, apart from the money, of course, to this sector, the charitable sector, what would it have been, do you think, on reflection?
I think it's a bit of innovation. It's thinking differently. It's a very different marketplace now. We can't keep doing the same thing. We can't keep relying on fundraising and charity shops to meet the gap, the funding gap between the money we get from the public purse and the cost of developing the business.
Unsustainable.
It's unsustainable in the longer term, and we've seen that happen in other hospices. It's unthinkable to think of hospices closing, but we've had one or two.
So what happens then?
The care that the patients receive has to be brought back into the public sector, into the NHS. So what happens then is the people that would come to us for end of life care or for palliative care end up usually in the NHS, in their local acute hospital, going through A&E and putting the pressure on that particular system. So we are a valuable part of that healthcare economy. We're a very relevant part of it, and I don't think that's always recognised. Our care in the community tends to morph into those areas where social services or the NHS doesn't provide the service or doesn't provide it well enough. And it's
a difficult situation. I mean, do you see friction then between, you as a hospice, and maybe in this particular area we're talking about the local health services here? I mean, we've got 3 major hospitals in this particular area that you serve. I mean, do you see friction there?
I don't think it's friction, but I think what needs to happen in the future is more collaboration. We need to work much more closely together. We can't continue to be this little island that's funded through charitable activity as it has been for 20, 30, 40 years. We need better ways of working, better partnership working.
Do you see resistance towards that thought? Do people think, well, that's the way we've always done it and that's the way we should remain because it gives us independence?
Yes, I think inevitably there is an element of that. I think the trustees who work for hospices throughout the country, they've grown up with a different way of working. So I think people will take a little time to come round to more collaborative models of working. But I think it's the only way we're going to continue and to be sustainable.
We're going to be talking a little bit more about corporate social responsibility a little bit later on as well. You may have seen that on some of the large organisations' websites. If you go on to many of the large national organisations, you'll see that they actually have a section on corporate social responsibility. What does that mean? How can that help? Is it something maybe your organisation could benefit from being involved with? We'll find out a little bit more. My guest on today's show is Marianne Imrie. She's the Chief Executive of Woking and Sambir Hospice and Wellbeing Care. You're watching Business Connections Live. Great to have your company as always. We're live here on a Monday. Don't forget, if you want to, you can ask any questions. If you wish, you can go onto the Twitter at BCL Business TV. Just put that hashtag in and we'll pick the questions up here. If you have a question for Marianne, then we can put the question to her. Let's go back a week now, shall we? On last week's show, we talked to David Richards. He's the founder of Talk About Value. And we were talking about how to talk about your products when you're out there networking, how to talk about your services when you're out there networking so that prospects want to buy them. It was a really interesting show. We had lots of great feedback on LinkedIn and on Facebook as well about that particular program. We received a number of emails here. And I know when I was talking to David during the week, he's had a lot of feedback from people who watched last week's program. They found it very, very valuable because it is a way of approaching what you've got. You're not just talking or selling your brand, your product on price. In fact, what you're doing is you are selling what you are putting together, the services you provide. You're selling them on the value that they provide to your customer. Now, that seems to me to be a better way of selling your products. I'm sure you'll agree if you watched the entire programme with the key takeaways from last week's programme. Here are the highlights from last week's edition of Business Connections Live. Now on today's show, we're going to be discussing how to talk about your products and your services so prospects want to buy them. Joining me in the studio is David Richards. He's the founder of an organisation called Talk About Value.
We generally talk about value for money. So we normally look at value as an economic value rather than looking at things that are perhaps more human. So you might think, well, actually, I've got my pricing right, but when you go out and you bid for a piece of business, you find you don't win it. And that's because the people looking at you, the customers, have decided there's a piece of value that other people are offering better than you, and actually price isn't their issue. There's one question I always find I ask, and that is, when you last won a piece of new contract, and your last new contract, did you ask your customers why they bought from you? Since 2010, we're in the age of the customer, because never before have customers got the opportunity to reach out and find information about products and services like they've ever been able to do before. What we don't do generally in business is ask enough questions of our customers in a way that leads us to understand what value we're offering them. But unless you fully understand their problems in a really deep way and understand what they value and how they can see that value affecting and improving their business, either from a revenue point of view, a cost management point of view, a strategic point of view, an operational point of view, or even a brand point of view, you're not going to really get across what value you can offer that company. Number one is economic value. That's basically, as we talked about, value for money, return on investment. You invest in a particular product, service or professional expertise, and then over a period of time you work out what it costs you and you do the equation, and that's your economic value. The second source of value Number two is the perceived value. Okay, and that's where brand can play. If you've got a view that a particular company has a particular reputation or perceived brand experience or is well known in their field, you will intuitively put a value on that. So that's the perceived one. The next one is
Number three,
relational. This is particularly important in B2B, business to business rather than consumer, because you want to have repeat purchases. So you want to engage with somebody on a regular basis, and they will put a value on the relationships you have with them. Number four is experiential.
Who?
Experiential.
Right.
That's what was your experience of them. Final one is social value. And we see this quite a lot these days, where people are saying, well, it's not just about the profit. I want to do something that gives back to the economy, or it's eco-friendly. Hi, I'm David Richards, and I'm the founder of Talk About Value. What I do with companies is to help them understand how to talk about their products, services and their professional expertise in a way that their prospects and customers want to buy it. And the way I do that is help them understand how to create, validate and then communicate their genuine value in a very busy and complex marketplace. Because if they do that, they'll not only be able to sell more, they'll be able to sell more profitably and also gain customer loyalty. So remember, there are 5 real types of values that you can use to your advantage. Number one is the economic value, the financial values, the typical ROI, the customer's willingness to pay. The second is the perceived value. What are they seeing in terms of your business that you can offer them? Brand is really important in that area, for example. The third one is basically the relationships you have with the customers, particularly in the business-to-business arena. You want long-term relationships, so look at the value you're offering through that. Offering contacts, offering thought leadership, helping people make their business even more effective. The fourth one is experiential value, the value you get from working with a company, the things that you can really get out of that relationship. And fifthly, the social value you can do if you're doing something where you're saying, well, it's not just about the profit, I'm giving something back to society. You can then list those out yourself and put that on a spreadsheet, for example, but what you need to do is validate that with your customer. Value, like beauty, is in the eye of the beholder. You need to talk to your customers more regularly than you do today, because if you understand them at a really deep level, you'll understand what they really appreciate and what they'll pay for. So that's what I would say. If you want to find out more, please go to my website, talkaboutvalue.com, or go to my LinkedIn page. I'm writing articles on a regular basis about this topic, and I'm very happy to share that with people throughout business. I hope you've enjoyed the show, and back to Steve.
David Richards on last week's edition of Business Connections Live, an absolutely fantastic program, and we were talking about all things to do with value. If you're going out there and you're in the race to the bottom at the moment, trying to make your brand, your product cheaper and cheaper and cheaper because you think that's the way that you're going to sell more of your products, your services, maybe you're just getting it wrong at the moment. You should be looking at the value that you provide, and that then gives you the edge over your competitors because you understand really what your customers are looking for. It was a cracking show last week. Don't forget, if you want to watch that program with David Richards or any of the other, I can't believe I'm saying this, 270 programs that we've recorded over the years. And the thing that's interesting about them is, in many respects, apart from maybe the Brexit ones, but in many respects, all the information, all the content, all the advice is applicable today as it was when we recorded the programme maybe 2 or 3 years ago. And we cover a whole range of different subjects, everything from fundraising for your business if you're starting up, if you're looking to get funds, if you're looking for an angel, executive directors, marketing, telesales, how to be a salesperson. It's all there. Social media, the lot. 270 programs, different experts, maybe sometimes taking a different view on the same topic, but really it gives you a lot of information. Just go to the website at businessconnectionslive.com, and if you're thinking to yourself, do you know what, we would love a program just like this one for our organization, turn your readers of that newsletter into viewers of your TV program. Get in touch with us here at Business Connections Live. It's dead easy to do. All you got to do is drop us an email to studio@businessconnectionslive.com. You can also, better still, we like this now, we've got a brand new telephone system, in fact. Pick up the phone and give us a ring. 01784 256 777 is our telephone number. Have a word with either myself or Linda Bazan. We're ready to take your calls. Not 24/7, but definitely between 9 and 5, those working hours. If you want, you can follow our stream of consciousness as well on Twitter at BCL Business TV. If you do respond to anything, please do make it a hashtag so that other people will pick it up as well. Tell you what, copy it in as well to the hashtag LBC Business Hour. That'd be good because then we get a wider audience and more people see your questions as well. You can also leave comments and questions, requests, or maybe there's a program that you'd like to see us do. You can do that on our Facebook page. But the best place to go to find out all about Business Connections Live, how to be a guest or whatever, then is to go to our website at businessconnectionslive.com. Okay, speech over. It's back to the programme. On today's show, we're discussing the myths about hospice care. In the studio today is Marianne Imrie. She's the Chief Executive of Woking and Sambir Hospice and Wellbeing Care. Marianne, we kind of alluded, we talked about, I understand now that funding is a real issue. 25% or thereabouts of the funding comes from the government, which just doesn't seem to be enough, quite frankly, as we all pay our taxes. But that's just a personal opinion. It'd be nice for it to be some more. Apart from the charitable side, before we move on to that, are there other ways that charities like yourself can raise the money? If your volunteers aren't out there doing such a terrific job for you, are you up the Swanee without a paddle?
Short answer is yes.
So what can be done?
Well,
what would you like to see done?
I would like to see better public funding for this service. If as a society we want to provide palliative and end-of-life care in an environment that isn't cheek by jowl within a trust hospital, a busy acute hospital, then we have to fund it properly. So my objective as a fairly new CEO in this business, which again is new to me, relatively new to me, I need to make sure that we establish a better funding mechanism for the services we provide.
When you talk to other CEOs who are in a similar situation to yourself, of other maybe charitable hospices,
yes,
do they say the same thing, or are they lost in a different world? Because you've literally just stepped out of the commercial environment into this one.
We all have the same challenges. We all have the same challenges. Some hospices that may be longer established than our own may have quite significant reserves through legacies, and therefore may be able to continue to function for longer when they're experiencing shortfalls in income. So that's part of the issue. The more reserves you have, obviously, the longer you can continue to operate.
We're not painting too dark a picture here, though, are we?
I think we're being realistic. I think there is a recognition generally that funding is not right, that it is inadequate. I think there's a recognition that hospices cannot continue to operate in isolation. We need to reach out to our stakeholder partners, and that's typically trusts and clinical commissioning groups that provide funding to provide better ways of doing things.
Because the problem that we've got, I mean, looking at the area you're in, which is, obviously Woking,
yes.
But I mean, we're looking here at the St. Peter's Trust, which is the hospital trust that
yes.
we're in here.
Yes.
They too are they're strapped for cash too anyway, aren't they?
Yes.
Well, they all are.
Yeah, I mean, we all have funding restrictions, regardless of what Boris might say. There are going to be funding restrictions for some time.
You do realise that Boris, when people are watching this, he may not be Prime Minister.
So I think that's very true, of course.
Or he may be in his second term. It all depends, you see.
Yeah, we do not know. But what we're trying to find is different ways of working together, smarter ways of working together, which means that we're not working completely in isolation with our partners in the public sector.
Do you think they sometimes see you as competitors nearly chasing the same money once again?
No, I don't see that. I think they see us providing a valuable service. I think they don't always feel that they understand how we operate, and they don't always find it easy to access the systems to get care for the patients that they might want to refer. And I think that's one of the things we need to address.
What is the criteria then for someone to go into the hospice? So is it something in the case they're in their local general hospital, and how do they move from what is effectively the public sector into the charitable sector?
Well, it's based on clinical criteria. Obviously, the services that we provide are limited by the number of beds that we have and the number of nurses that we have in the community. So sometimes we have to make very difficult decisions about which patients should receive that care. And that's really tough to ask nurses to choose between one patient over another. So access is based on clinical need, and it's often based on whether the individual has care at home. Are they in a secure environment? Can we continue providing care at home? Or do they not have anybody, and therefore the best place for them is to come into the inpatient unit? So there's a huge range of decisions that we have to make when we're considering how and who to treat.
Let's talk about other ways that money can be brought into the charitable sector. Corporate social responsibility is something that we hear bandied about on a regular basis. Most people, I think, on a day-to-day basis, may have heard the expression, but won't. CSR, it's corporate CSR, isn't it?
Yeah.
People will have heard of it, but won't realise what it is. There are some organisations that trumpet this, and they talk about CSR all the time, but you never see the physical incarnation of it. And then there are some organisations that say they do it, and it's not measured by anything.
Yeah.
How important is organisations setting up corporate social responsibility and then you being part of that? And how does it work? Well, that's a big question, wasn't it?
It is a big question. I mean, typically it works in the same way as any volunteer or trustee gets involved with us. There's usually someone in a position of authority in terms of decision making who has been touched in some way by the work that we do. And that's the initial connection. Then we can begin to talk to those decision makers within the company and discuss how they can help us. Sometimes it's through very tangible ways. It's providing goods and services, providing advice. Sometimes it is them getting involved, their staff getting involved with different ventures that they believe adds value to their team. We've had, lots of companies have come back and said, okay, well, our ask was £5,000 from our staff. We set them the target, and actually what we saw was those team members coming together in a way that they hadn't come together before, to determine to work through ways in which they could provide that money with our support. So that has worked incredibly well for many companies.
I suppose the hard bit is those companies realising you're there in the first place.
It is.
And being aware. You guys have put together a really interesting little film. It's only 2.5 minutes, but it does show that even local people, because it's just one of those things, we go through life and it isn't until we're in the situation that we realise that perhaps that service is available or that service is actually there and it can help us. But until you get to the moment when you actually need it, you know very little about it. This is an interesting film that your team put together. Have a look at this and it'll just show you the problems that any organisation, any charitable organisation has of raising its own profile so that people know what they're all about.
No, not really, to be honest. I've heard of Sambear, but I don't know their proper services.
I know there is one, and I believe it is in the road parallel to here somewhere, but I'm not entirely sure.
I think there's hospices all over the country.
It's like an end-of-life care.
Hospice is just like a care home.
Oh, that's a good question. I think general health care, I think, for people.
Just the general looking after someone when they're ill.
Do you guys have like in-home hospice as well? So coming to people's homes and helping them at home, things like that as well.
I don't know. That I don't know. I assume, depending if it's private or not.
I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure, really.
I think hospice care might be something that's mixed, so maybe means tested in some way.
I would imagine.
I would have thought so, yeah. I'd say yes.
I'd like to think that they did.
Do you know what? Morally, I would say they should do, but my intuition tells me they probably get very limited funds from government.
Naturally, I would assume old people, but I'm sure there are some younger people there who need the help as well.
I don't think there's an age range for hospice. I think it goes across the spectrum. I think it must be from children as young as 5 who are suffering from cancer in an early stage to people who are on the latter end of their lives, much older, more mature.
What, 18 upwards?
Thank you very much for watching our video. If you want to find out more information, please visit wsbhospices.co.uk.
Just amazing. And I think the thing that was amazing there was the assumptions that people make.
Yeah, absolutely.
The younger ones and the middle-aged ones didn't know where it was, but were aware of it, didn't understand how the funding is actually done. They felt that it is government funded, and it was just a real insight. That must be frightening when you watch some of that some of the time. I mean, it's lovely that they're aware, but
yeah,
how do we get the message out more?
Well, it is illuminating, and I have to say, it was only when I started to become involved, firstly as a trustee and now in this role, that I fully understood the range of what we actually do.
You're invisible in full view.
Something like that. Yeah, I think most people would. Well, in fact, I was about to say most people understand that or think that it's all about end-of-life care, but clearly they don't even think that much from that.
Well, there's something came up there, and it says, what is the difference? And if people don't know, then we need to define it, the difference between a care home and a hospice. So what is the difference?
Some people who would come to us for specialist palliative care, so we might sort out a period of time, sort out their pain control, provide respite care. they may transfer from us to a nursing home if that nursing home is able to provide the level of care. Quite often they can't, because a lot of the care that we do provide is complex. So most nursing homes will not provide specialist palliative care. They will provide a much more general nursing care. So I guess that's the difference. So our patients are a mixture of end-of-life care, probably about 25%, and 75% are specialist palliative care. So these are people who are living with very debilitating conditions. They need their pain control sorted out. Their relatives, their carers need respite care, because these conditions can go on for a long time. We have patients who will come in and out from us. They might come in and out for care over a number of years, which again is not something you would particularly expect to see within a hospice unless you understood in detail how they work.
And most people, when they go to a hospice, not hospice, when they're going to a care home, a lot of them are going there to stay, aren't they? It's long-term residency to maybe end of life, where you guys come in again.
Yes, and we provide services to nursing homes as well. So we provide specialist nursing care and knowledge and training to nursing homes. Because if people go into a nursing home, there's a reasonable expectation that they stay there and that the staff are able to care for them throughout the course of their stay at that nursing home. And that's not always true, so we do provide a lot of training as well.
More from Marianne Imrie in just a few moments. She's the Chief Executive of Woking and Sambir Hospice and Wellbeing Care. We're going to go back to the corporate social responsibility as well. If you are a business, we're going to be explaining to you how perhaps you can get in touch and how you can help and what is expected as well. Is it something that you're going to be going to your staff and going, okay, they're going to be our registered charity this year, we're going to raise money for them? Or is it something that you as a business can actually go, right, what we're going to do is that we're going to set aside this amount of money and other benefits? By you helping, is there a way it can help your business too? We'll find out more about that in just a few moments' time here on this edition of Business Connections Live. Okay, let's go back, because we're talking here a lot about palliative care and end-of-life care, but in a day-by-day basis, we've got to be very wary that our own personal health in business is important on an ongoing day-by-day basis. How to minimise stress and increase productivity? How do you minimise that? If you've ever worked in a really stressful environment, you know that what actually does happen is that your effectiveness, it drops off. You become very stressed, you don't see the wood from the trees, and it gets very, very difficult. On the programme, on Business Connections Live 245, went out in December of last year, we were talking to Sarah Alexander, and she was talking to us about how to minimise stress and increase productivity. It was a great show as well. She said, caught up in the seemingly endless treadmill of emails, work, pressures, information overload, constant distractions, and the feeling of there's never enough time. We've all been there for that. As a result, we never take the opportunity to consider if there is a different approach we can take that would help us be calmer, more productive and effective. Good show, actually, to give you the key takeaways from that particular programme. Here is Sarah Alexander.
I'm Sarah Alexander. My business is Coaching Magnificence, and I'm based in Godalming in Surrey, working with business owners, senior directors and their teams to help them manage stress and be more productive. And my first takeaway is to really take control of your time. What things in your schedule can you influence so that you have just a little feeling of greater control of your schedule and your time? Take control of your energy by eating well, exercising, and also take control of your mind by being aware of what's going on in your mind, the negative self-talk you might have, perhaps some negative beliefs you might be holding about yourself and your own ability, and flip them round into something positive. And I would say be mindful of the fact that you cannot work hard and fast all day. You can work for 90 minutes productively and effectively, but then both you and your prefrontal cortex, that thinking, logical part of your brain, need 15-20 minutes of recovery time to then come back and do another 90 minutes of effective working. And I think my last point is to really establish as many positive routines as you can. The part of our brain that stores our routines is called the basal ganglia. And the more we can have good routines established and something that we do every day without focusing, without thinking about them, without having to make ourselves do them, the easier our life becomes. And very often the difference between successful people and those that are less successful is successful people just have a host of really good routines that support their success. So I wish you luck with it. Thank you.
Sarah Alexander there, and if you want to watch that program, it is program number 245, a really interesting show actually, and it went out at the end of last year, the 3rd of December, and I do suggest you go to our website at businessconnectionslive.com, and as I said, there's over 270 programs, about 350, 400 hours of content available on there, so just go to the website, check out the different programs up there. I'm sure you're going to find one that's going to be suitable for you, and if you do want to find out how to be an expert guest on a future program, we're going to be taking August off, but then back into September, October, November and so on. If you want to find out more about that, then get in touch with us, and who knows, you could be on the show. So then we're discussing the myths about hospices, and what we're trying to do today is to dispel some of the myths that surround them. Where does the funding come from? I think we've covered that relatively comprehensively. How can we as businesses help, though, charities and hospices in our particular areas is what we're going to be talking about now. My guest is Marianne Imrie. She's the Chief Executive of Woking and Sambir Hospice, and also the Wellbeing Care. Just out of interest, it's called obviously Woking location. Yep. Sambir. Who was Sambir?
Sambir was a consultant paediatrician who set up a hospice in Weybridge, a 10-bedded hospice in Weybridge, and Woking had a 10-bedded hospice, and 2 or 3 years ago they decided to put them. The decision was made to combine both hospices into a new purpose-built unit in Woking. And
that actually meant getting rid of some of the old premises, didn't it, and one new premise?
It did.
Quite something, actually, isn't it?
Yeah, quite a big step for trustees to take, given the overall climate at the time.
Is there, I'm sure there isn't, but I'd like to think there might be, is there a safety net anywhere for you guys? Is there anything there that you go, do you know what, if it all hits the fan, don't worry, there's always this?
I think there's the view that no government will want to see a good hospice fail, simply because of the range of services that we provide. I don't think that's been fully tested, and I don't want to rely on it.
You don't be the one to do that.
So, you know, I've got a plan B and a plan C, but I'm concentrating on plan A at the moment, which is keep the service free at the time of delivery, based on clinical need, and sort the funding out.
It's interesting you say about a plan A, B and C. We had a gentleman on the programme called Brad Burton, who is one of the UK's leading motivational speakers, and he says if you have a plan B, then you don't believe in your plan A. And I kind of agree with that in many respects. So
I know, but just in case, just for safety,
we'll have a plan B and C.
Yeah, people need to know that we have a plan B and C.
All right. Well, when it comes to, we'll go back to the corporate social responsibility. Let's go back to that then. If I'm a business owner at the moment, does it have to be driven by my employees, or is it something that I can do? I can approach you and say, look, we want to somehow support your organisation. Is that something I can do as a business? And from a business perspective, is it of any value to the business except for maybe a bit of publicity?
I don't think we should underwrite the publicity bit. I think there is I
consider myself told.
I think there is a halo effect. I think when somebody starts getting involved, I think there's the good karma element. People feel that they're being involved in it, and something good and something tangible. As I said earlier, most people come to the table, as it were, because of a personal association that they have, and then they bring it for discussion within the company, and that's how most of our connections are made. So,
and then when that connection is made, what do you expect from the organisations, from the businesses? Are you looking for them to get behind and do charitable events where they're raising raising funds for you, or are you looking for donations, or is it a little bit of both, do you think?
It can be both those things, but it can also be about bringing specialist skills to the company.
Now, people don't think about that. We always think about money.
We do. And, you know, I'm an example. I had my own consultancy company, and I'm bringing what I think are the skills, the commercial and organisational healthcare skills that I have honed over too many decades for me to consider. But they're the skills that I'm bringing. And we have trustees who have got backgrounds in the legal profession, in finance, in banking, and all of those trustees are bringing a set of skills to us.
So skills
either individually or through their companies. So they're absolutely
skills are just as important as the money.
They are very important to us because obviously as a small organisation we can't employ all those skills. And we need them infrequently, so there wouldn't be...
You can pick and choose when you're going to use them.
Correct.
What about tangible things? I mean, are there... God, I hate going down this route, but we're going to go down it anyway. Are there tax implications for organisations? Is it something that they can... So that what's the incentives for them as well? Are there other things that they can say, right, we do this, and therefore that results in that?
I think they do get tax benefits. They do get, as I said before, the halo effect. For their staff, they're seen as providing important resources to a local charity, and I think all of those things work well. I think they learn how to navigate the system, which actually, again, I don't think we should underestimate. That's incredibly complicated system to signpost, and I think by association with us, if they understand how that works, that's also important to them. We have, in fact, we have a company at the moment designing a garden for us. So we've had their we've got their guys on site doing all the hard landscaping, and they're now doing the planting. I was told the other day we have probably too many volunteers in. I think it's in a few weeks. In September, when the weather is cooler. Coming in
Stop
September.
Volunteering, will you? What's about that?
We have more people than we can use to come and plant, and that's huge, isn't it? Because they can see something tangible from what they're doing, and everybody feels good about giving, and I don't think we ought to underplay that at all.
Well, I was just looking down here that you recognise companies that in your particular sector. £2,500 or over a 12-month period. Actually, it's quite minimal, isn't it, over a period of time that these companies are giving. And for the company's point of view, use of your business supporter logo on their print and digital material, which is good, the halo effect again. I've never heard this expression before, nurse-o-meter to display in your office. What does that mean? What's a nurse-o-meter?
It's a way of demonstrating where their cash is going. So it's a bit like saying, if you give us X, that's so many hours of nursing time.
The next one, I think, is a cracking idea. The fact that you organise quarterly business breakfasts as well.
We do.
So networking events are being done there, which is great because it means that the local businesses are actually, are they held at your...
Yes.
So they're actually coming to the hospice.
So part of it is getting people over the threshold. Nobody, well, let's not say nobody, but there is a reluctance for some people to actually step over the threshold because they have a misconception that hospice is going to be a very difficult environment to walk into, and all of them are pleasantly surprised. They all get a tour of the place after their bacon bap and their discussions and networking, and you can see the scales fall from their eyes as they walk round, and they hear laughter, they see a very pleasant environment, they see families being comforted within that environment, because what we do is as much about caring for those relatives and that family as it is about caring for their patient.
If a business wants to get involved, and we may as well do the plug now, if they do want to get involved with yourselves, I take it this is something that is pretty much many hospices will do across the UK.
I think so. I think increasingly so we are relying or recognising the impact that local businesses can have and the benefits that it can bring. So yes, I think we are all looking at this as a potential source of collaboration within our communities. And
I mean,
the networking events are great fun. You know, people do come along and we all have something in common. We're all working within a local environment. And we all have some sort of social responsibility. So it's very interesting when you listen to the conversations that go on at those meetings.
Would you say that you're lucky for the location where you are? Here we are, you're in Surrey. You're the leafy lanes of Surrey. You've got maybe more corporate headquarters
yes.
in Surrey.
Yeah.
How do you reach out to them if they're not aware of you? I know you're just about to start a radio campaign on the local radio station, The Eagle,
yes.
across Surrey and Sussex, which is fantastic news. So that's brilliant. Is that the way you're reaching out to them, or is it a case as the CEO that you're going out and you're picking the phone up and you're calling?
It's a number of different ways. There's those things, but there's also we have 12 trustees. Most of them have been active in their business lives throughout the Woking and Weybridge areas. They all have connections. So, you know, when you have been around long enough, you create these connections and these networking opportunities. So we do try and use that to get introductions, to come in and try and eyeball people across the table and tell them what we do. So I spend a lot of my time talking to people and having these sorts of conversations so that they understand what we do and the funding challenges that we have.
There's some more to come on this edition of the programme. We're nearly into our last quarter, in fact. Marianne Imrie, the Chief Executive of Woking and Sambir Hospice and Wellbeing Care, my guest on today's edition of the programme. By the way, thank you very much for watching today. Thank you for all the response that we get each and every week as well on our LinkedIn when we put something out there. If you do want to connect in with us, please do go ahead. As I said earlier on, if you want to be a guest on the programme, then go to the website. You'll find there's a little thing that says how to be a guest on the programme. It also tells you about things on speaker show reels. So if you're a keynote speaker and you want to raise your profile, go to the website, find out more about some of the services that we offer here at Business Connections Live, along, of course, with our corporate production too. But we would love to get you on the programme as an expert guest to make you just a little bit famous, to raise your profile. So what we're talking about here, I think the trouble, and it's interesting, here we are, an organisation that we're talking to that is doing so much good within the community, but yet it too suffers from the scourge of every small business, which is that obscurity, the feeling of obscurity, people not knowing you're there. One person will know, the next person won't. How many times have you driven onto an industrial estate, you've seen a big multinational business sitting there, big headlines, there's their name on the side of their building, and you've never heard of them. They too are suffering from the same obscurity that all of us suffer from as businesses. So get in touch with us here at Business Connections Live. Find out more about how you can use maybe the content that we produce for your organisation to promote yourself. This program, by the way, goes out on all the different platforms. It goes out on Stitcher, Blueberry, iTunes. Leave a review on iTunes if you can, and a whole host of other podcasting and live platforms. So please get in touch with us here at Business Connections Live, and who knows, we could help you raise your head above the parapet when it comes to removing the obscurity of your organisation. You're watching Business Connections Live. Great to have your company with us today. My guest is Marianne Imrie. She's the Chief Executive of Woking and Sambir Hospice and Wellbeing Care, and we're exploding the myths about hospice care at the moment. We've been talking a lot about the business aspect. If you do want to get in touch with Marianne, if there's elements that you feel we've only touched on, we've only scraped, and you think to yourself, actually, I would like to find out a little bit more about how my company, you may be a British Gas of the world, you may be a BP of the world, you may be a large multinational. Maybe you're an overseas organisation with their headquarters locally and you want to find out how you can actually help the local community a little bit more. Here is an ideal opportunity. Marianne's details you will find on our programme page on the website at Business Connections Live. All her contact details are there. Just go to the website that's on the screen right now. Find Marianne's programme. It'll be, depending on when you're watching this, it'll be the one that's on the screen. Pick up her contact details and get in touch with her to see how you can help them grow and to maintain the operation that we really do need in the particular area. Is there an element of this that we haven't touched? Because I know that we've talked about how businesses can help. We've talked about how the funding of this helps. We've touched on as well what the volunteers and the people that are you looking for volunteers too? Is that always something that you're looking for?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, particularly we're looking for volunteers who've got specialist skills that they can bring to us.
What kind of skills do you think are important?
Funnily enough, I was at a golf day on Friday last week, and there was some chap who'd worked for HMRC all his life and had retired. he'd retired.
I'm sure he was very nice.
He was a lovely chap. And he'd just retired, and actually he was looking for something. He wanted to do something. He didn't quite know what he wanted to do, but in discussion, clearly he's got a lot of skills. Financial skills, bookkeeping skills that actually had to be useful to us.
It was interesting, we were talking just before we came in, because of the kind of organisation it is, the age group of the people that you are dealing with tends to be older. Does it need that influx of young people too, do you think, with their enthusiasm, their different perspective, their social media savvy, all those kind of things?
I think it does. I think like most things in life, you need a mix. We all need to be challenged by younger people coming through with different ways of working. We had a lovely example. One of our young volunteers has just won an award within Woking. He's won an award for being Volunteer of the Year, and he's a young lad of 18 or 19 who's volunteered with us. I'm sure he and his family would say he's got as much out of it as we've got out of him, and we hope that he's going to go on and stay with us and perhaps take on a paid role with us.
It's very interesting because that's how we got in contact with you. We've heard of Sam Beer, Woking and Sam Beer Hospice. We were very, very aware of you because of the shops, in fact, that you have around our particular local area. We're based in Surrey as well. And so we were aware of you, but we met you at a chamber event. Do those kind of events, not you, but we met your team.
Yeah.
They were incredible. They stood up and they presented to the assembled businesses that were there on the day. And if that was off the cuff and ad hoc, then they are a credit to you.
Yes, and I think the passion shows through. I mean, I think you could... I try and walk around every day, and I talk to people, and I'm continually blown away by the passion and commitment that they have to the cause. It's what makes them get up in the morning and drive to work and come and do the sorts of jobs that they do. As I said, I couldn't do it. I'm happy to be there to support them. That's my role. My role is to support them. They're out there, face to face in the community, in the hospice, making people's lives as good as they can be, and that's what I'm there for.
Where do you see yourself next year and the hospice next year? What's the future? Is there? We were talking about Plan A. What's the 5-year plan?
Well, Plan A is to get funding sorted out so that we know we're secure, and we know we're in a position that when we go out and fundraise for something, it's fundraising for new services, new equipment, as opposed to money to keep the doors open. Because that's not a great message to be going out with. So the vision is that, golly, 5 years is a long time. In the next 18 months, we get ourselves to that position of being financially sustainable, and we carry on with all the fundraising, all the good work that we do, but that's about developing new services and becoming an even more relevant part of our local health economy.
It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you today. It's been really interesting, very different kind of programme for a change. It's been nice. So I thank you very much for coming in. But you're the same, I'm afraid. Like all our guests, we always say, what are the key takeaways from today's programme? We ask you to look straight down camera number 4, which is this one over here. Say who you are and where you're from. Take a breath. Who you are and where you're from. And what the key things is that you'd like our viewers to remember about today's programme. It's this one here, one with the red light on. It's all down to you. Take it away.
I'm Marian Imrie. I'm the Chief Executive of the Woking and Sambir Hospice and Wellbeing team. I hope what you've taken away today is a better understanding of the work that we do. It's not just about end of life, it's about making people's lives more comfortable, more bearable when they have disease or debilitating conditions. I hope you have understood a little more about the work that we do and the funding challenges that we have, and what our aspirations are for the future, which is to develop our services to become an even more relevant part of the local health economy. If you're listening and thinking about how as a business you could get involved, I think you should come and talk to us. I think you hopefully will have had an understanding about how your skills, your expertise, your passion, the energy of your teams could work well with us, could support us, but could use us as well to network with other local companies in a similar position. And I think that's, if I've done nothing else but made you think about that today, then my job is done.
Thank you very much indeed for joining us on today's programme. It's been our pleasure to have you on the programme. And don't forget, okay, so this is specific to Surrey. It's Woking, Weybridge. It's in the Surrey area, and we understand that. But is there a hospice in your local area, in your town, in your community that you should be talking to and finding out how perhaps you as a business can help them to survive? Because the problems will be the same right across the UK, right across the board. So if you can go in there and you can talk to them and you can find out how you can help them, and as Marianne has said, it's not just about money, it's about skills as well. What are the skills that perhaps that you can impart, that you can share, that you have within your organisation? And then, of course, the money, that all-important thing, is there a way? Only a quarter of the funding, on average, is what these local charities, this charity industry, this hospice that's looking after people at a particular time in their life, that's the only funding that they are certain of. The rest of it comes from us, from the community, from their charitable works. If you can help, go along, find out more about your local hospice, your local charities, and support them. And as we said earlier on, there's a lot of charities out there. We understand that. Yeah. And you've just got to make up your mind which one you're going to support, which one is most relevant to you, and which one is the best fit.
That's right, and a lot of that depends on whether you've been touched in some way, or a member of your family's been touched in some way that they've unfortunately had to receive our service.
Fantastic, as I said, having you on the programme. And that wraps up today's edition of Business Connections Live. We do it all again next week, coming up on future programmes. Who we got lined up for you? Well, Jerry Brown, the customer lifeguard, is going to be on the programme. It's all about customer experience. He'll be explaining all. Martine Robbins from the HR department will be on the programme. Martina Robbins, a good show there. If you don't have your own in-house human resources team, then maybe she'll give you some advice on what you should need to be doing. Antonio Falco, the sales director, will be on the show. He'll be giving advice on how you can get more sales into your organisation, what you should be doing, what you should be considering, and maybe some advice on your different pieces of sales technique. Dilys Guywan is going to be on the program as well. She'll have another great show lined up for you. And Penny Haslam, the award-winning inspirational speaker, will be on the programme in the near future as well. So there you go. That's who we've got coming up over the next couple of months. Don't forget, as I said, in August there won't be any live programmes, but we will be showing some of our favourites to you as well. But until we do it all again next week, thank you very much for watching, and from myself, Steve Hunter, and my guest today, Martina, it's have a great week. Bye for now. Bye-bye.
Business Connections Live, the UK's leading online business channel.